I knew I had to make it work today because you're hard to lock down.
Listen, man, I appreciate you making the time.
I got 3 sheets today, so I was like, I got a little bit of time. If I could squeeze it in, I'll make it work.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
So if you just want to start off and kind of just tell me a little bit about you, what you're up to recently, and just like your job title. What are you doing right now?
Sure. So my name is Amjed. I'm the creator, producer, and head of operations for Inside the Green Room with Danny Green, and I also work as a customer success manager for Lingo Live, a tech startup based in San Francisco now.
Cool. And you've been out of college for a couple of years now?
I graduated from college in 2012. I went to Ohio State. I studied finance, and I never thought that I'd be doing what I'm doing today, but I'd always done things differently my entire life anyway. So I don't think that this is really far off the beaten path for me. Right?
What'd you expect senior year? Are you getting ready to graduate? Were you looking for a job, or were you like, just gonna see what happens?
I had spent like some of the formidable years of my childhood studying like engineering and building robots and solving problems and doing math competitions and things like that. And so when I got to college, I actually started studying mechanical engineering. And as I started going through that experience, I was like, one, there's not a lot of people that look like me here, right? Two, I feel like my personality requires for me to be surrounded by people that are a little bit more different and more charismatic and more outspoken. And I wanted to be able to connect with people. I started to feel like that was my natural knack. And so I yearned for conversation, and I wanted to be able to do things that were different and experience more in my college experience. And so I actually called my mentor at the time, Bill, and Bill was like, hey, I actually studied finance, and I was living in New York City, and he told me about his career and what he did, and it sounded like such a great opportunity for me to pivot to do something more fulfilling. And so I ended up going to business school and learning about how to grow businesses, how to start businesses, different strategies, and I really enjoyed and expected that experience was going to be what led me through my college career. And then my senior year, I had always had this passion for photography. I started shooting photos when I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old on my dad's cameras.
That's awesome.
And it never turned into a career or anything. I never really thought about it until my senior year. A friend of mine was like, hey, you love photography, but you don't have a professional camera. I was like, yeah, I don't really want to spend the money on it. And so I thought about it a little bit more, and it was around my birthday, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go buy one. So I went out and I bought a camera, and it's the camera that I still use today.
Wow.
And so that really allowed me to start unlocking some of the more creative aspects of who I am. I started to shoot photos of the people around me and tell their stories and just try to inspire other people. And so I love that work. And I started working with a friend of ours, Mark, who reached out to me and was like, hey, I'd love to get your 2 cents on some of the work that I'm doing. And, he's a creative director, and so I've gotten to work underneath him and learn a lot from him. But then graduation came, right? And I was like, all right, I had this big time job in New York City working in financial services, doing consulting for a company called Ernst & Young. And I had interned there, and I felt like the experience was good enough for me that I wanted to come back and learn more. Little did I know, starting from the very beginning at an organization can be not just challenging, but really detrimental to your mental health, because you come in eager and hungry and you want to learn and you want to contribute in meaningful ways. But you have to kind of take a step back and be patient and learn very specific things in the very beginning before you can contribute in a meaningful way. And, I'm a quick learner, and I found myself kind of absorbing some of the information and getting good at what I was doing. But I also found myself getting really bored. I was working with investment banks and hedge funds and that kind of thing, and helping them solve some of their problems, and I felt like I missed out on the opportunity to really be connected to a bigger mission, or to actually impact someone directly.
So you felt like you really were just in too big of a company and you weren't making an impact in it, or?
I think it was, being part of a huge, well-oiled machine where there was a process for every process, right? And I think that made it challenging for me to really identify with where I fit into the bigger piece of the puzzle, because everything was already solved for, right? There were partners and principals who would come to the table with subject matter experts, and everything was already designed and organized, and they just needed certain people, especially at my level, to push the buttons. And for me, I didn't get a degree for me to have someone else think for me.
Exactly.
I got a degree for me to think for myself, right? And to solve problems and to contribute in meaningful ways where I had the opportunity to do that. And so I worked on some projects where I had some senior managers who believed in me and understood that I had something bigger to contribute. And those people pulled me onto projects left and right, and they're saying, hey, we want you to stay, right? And I just got to the point where I was working so much, and I felt like my mission in this world was bigger than that. And so I decided to leave, and I left to go work for a startup.
I never looked back.
And I never looked back.
It's crazy.
Never.
I feel like some people would have taken that experience and been like, oh, yeah, you may not have felt like you're making an impact, but you know, you kind of fall into a routine. It gets kind of easy, and people just like that. They don't need to go anywhere else. But you felt like you had something more. You could do more in this world than just, you know, do a job that you weren't exactly happy with.
Yeah, man. I see my life as a culmination of a lot of different experiences and sacrifices. And I think for me, my family and I won the U.S. Diversity Lottery. So we came to the U.S. as immigrants in 2001 from Saudi Arabia.
Oh, wow.
And my family's from Sudan, right? And we could talk about what's going on in Sudan later on. But so when we came to the U.S., I didn't speak any English, and my parents barely spoke any English, and neither of them had gone to college. And so this was a brand new opportunity for us. My entire immediate family, my parents and my two brothers, we moved to Columbus, Ohio by fate. And, you know, I look at the sacrifices that my parents made, because when we came to the U.S., it took maybe 15 years for my mom to be able to go back home and see her family. And I look at the sacrifices she made so that my family and my brothers and I could be here and have the opportunities that we have. And that sacrifice fuels me every single day to experience something like that, right? Like her mother passed away at one point in the journey, 10 years into being in the U.S., and she wasn't able to go home because we just didn't have the money.
Wow.
Right, so that's extremely painful for her, but for me, I witnessed that and I recognized that's sacrifice, right? And so I woke up, and I still wake up every single day hungry and ambitious, because I want to be able to provide for my family and to make them proud, right? And I look at my father and both my mother, when they first came, worked between the two of them 4 jobs at one point, rotating to be able to pick us up from school.
The hustle.
Really hustling, right? Right. This is truly the American dream.
Yeah.
And so I never let that experience be diminished by giving up or by not pushing myself to the greatest extent that I can.
So you definitely get a lot from your parents, because you are a hustler yourself. You're all over the place. You're working a couple jobs. So tell me about what you're doing. I know you're doing the Danny Green podcast, and I want to get into that. But what's your other job right now that you're doing? Yeah,
so I work as a customer success manager. So I manage client relationships for a company called Lingo Live. Mm-hmm. And what we do, this is something that I'm actually passionate about, because I mentioned to you I never spoke English before I came here. Yeah. And so we have a platform where people can actually communicate with one another, with another coach who helps you develop communication skills or fill in language gaps if you have them. A lot of people are not native English speakers that come to the U.S. and they need to be able to work in English, and they have the skills. They just sometimes aren't able to communicate their thoughts or ideas or lead teams or give presentations. And so Lingo Live helps them do that.
Wow.
And so we work with some really huge tech companies like Slack and Snap and Salesforce, Indeed. We've got a lot of clients all over the world, and so that's something that I'm passionate about.
And what do you do inside the company?
So as a customer success manager, I manage client relationships, and I also run strategies for helping to build out programs within their organizations. So I manage the relationships. I'm responsible for selling more to them. It's a pretty salesy role, but I get to have pretty heavy influence too on kind of the marketing of marketing strategies that we implement. I get to have a heavy hand in the way that we improve sales processes or we communicate with the clients. And we host sometimes information sessions or just type of like case studies that we do to highlight the work that we do together.
And you're working with companies all over the world and individuals. So what does your schedule look like for that? Are you just kind of always on call for that?
My schedule is insane, man. I just got back from Toronto. Today is Thursday. I just got back from Toronto on Tuesday night. And Tuesday night I had a meeting at 1 a.m. After I just landed, I had a meeting at 1 a.m. because I had a client who was based in Tokyo or something. And so it was a susceptible time for them, right? So we were able to have the meeting. But on top of that, right, there's a lot of moving pieces for the podcast as well, where sometimes I'm on call for random times in the day. So I kind of work around the clock. So I get very little sleep, as if you can imagine.
Can imagine. All right, so the Danny Green podcast. You are one of the lead producers on it and founders. You kind of originated it. How did that happen? Yeah. How did you meet Danny Green? Tell me about this.
It's an interesting story. So my friend Harrison has been a reporter and journalist for over 10 years now, and he grew up in Long Island. Mm-hmm. And Danny also grew up in Long Island, and they had a mutual friend that connected the two of them. And so Harrison had been covering Danny and other athletes, professional basketball players and young basketball players that were on the rise throughout his journey as a writer. And so through that experience, he not only got to know Danny, but a lot of other people. And, Harrison had been living in Columbus when I was there for going to school at Ohio State. And he just saw some of the work that I was doing with Mark and some of the photos that I'd been doing after I graduated and left to New York City. And we just stayed in touch. You know, he's a funny guy, and he likes to party and have a good time. and you know, I'm young, so I love that energy. And so he gave me a call and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this podcast with this guy named Danny. And I was busy at the time. I was really heavily involved in photography. So I was like, sounds good, man. Give me a call next week. Let's talk about it. I get back to whatever I'm doing. So, you know, next week comes and he calls me and he's like, hey, so here's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to do this pilot podcast with this guy named Danny Green. Would you be willing to take some photos? I was like, I mean, I can take photos, yeah, but what else do you need? Like, Is that all you need? Like, what are you trying to do? So he started explaining to me what he wanted to do and how he wanted to basically give Danny the opportunity to develop his reps so that he can become a broadcaster in his career after he's done playing basketball. And he wanted to position himself for a career to get back on TV,
which is smart.
Because he you know, had been working for Spectrum Sports Ohio, who eliminated their entire sports division. So when they got rid of their sports division, he was out of a job. And so he hustled. I mean, he's one of the hardest working, most creative people that I've ever met. And you know, I pitched him my vision for what I wanted to bring the show, or how I wanted to bring the show to life, and he loved it.
Wow.
So he was like, all right. We spent the next few weeks, you know, ironing out graphic designs for a logo, ironing out a vision for how do we incorporate video. The video didn't work out until we ended up signing a deal with Yahoo Sports Canada, who have been tremendous for our growth and support.
Definitely being able to take it to the next level, having the support and money behind you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, so the first time that I met Danny was the first day that we sat down and recorded. Before that, I was in text with him and Harrison. And, you know, Danny took a chance on me. He's like, Harrison believes in you, so I believe in you, and let's make it happen. And little did he know, I'd never produced a podcast before.
Yeah, but you were, you know, sometimes you got to learn after. You have the skills. You can do it. You just kind of got to accept it and then go from there and just learn as you go.
Yeah, I learned a long time ago, if you say no to opportunities as they come up, you say no to the opportunity to learn.
Yep.
You say no to the opportunity to be exposed, to do something bigger than yourself or something new. And for me, I was looking for every opportunity to learn and to grow and to contribute in meaningful ways and develop skills that I cared about. And so, you know, Harrison and I actually went the day of the recording of the podcast to B&H Video here in the city, picked up the equipment, drove, this was like 7 a.m., drove all the way out to Long Island after that, sat down in this like community rec center called the Yes We Can Community Center. They let us use the room for free because me and him had just paid for all these equipment. Yeah. We had no money, right? And so after that, we sat down and, you know, we realized, okay, this equipment is pretty complex. Like, we should figure this out before he gets here.
Yeah.
So we're playing around with the equipment. We're calling video producers that he knew from TV stations, and they're helping us.
That's
and I'm
crazy.
Googling things over here on left and right, trying to figure out how to use Audacity, which was a pain to use. And so we just hustled and we figured it out. Danny showed up. I met him. We sat down. We started recording everything. And again, like, I had just built an entire digital strategy for how do we create content that's in bite-sized, shareable pieces so that we could put it on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook so that people would see it and then go and share it. So, you know, I'm running all our social, right? While I'm listening and running the mixed board.
Just doing everything.
And I'm taking photos, and I've got a camera set up so we can record Danny and Harrison while they're talking because I wanted to bring video into life, you know, to life as well. So doing all those things, I'm like, all right, this is kind of hectic. But we did that for 6-7 episodes before we had a deal with Yahoo Sports, who helped us out a lot.
So you guys weren't even going up to Toronto yet. Everything was in Long Island?
That was in July, right?
Okay.
So Danny had just gotten traded a few days before.
Where did he get traded from?
Him and Kawhi Leonard. He got traded from the San Antonio
right?
Spurs.
Okay, yeah.
And so, you know, obviously I kept up with sports and basketball has always been a passion of mine. But I just didn't put two and two together that this Danny Green that Harrison was talking about was Danny Green that plays for the Spurs.
Oh, so you didn't even know?
No, I had no idea.
This was just Danny to you.
Yeah, I just, you know, he was just like, hey, I got this project with this guy named Danny. Like, would you be interested? I was like, yeah, sure. And then when I finally met him in person, when Harrison came and we sat down and we chatted in person and caught up again, I was like, this Danny Green you're talking about, does he play basketball? And he's like, yeah, bro, Danny plays for the Spurs.
Of course.
I was like, oh, okay, cool. Right? Like I you know, I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of really cool people.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't know, Danny's pretty cool. Like, I hear a lot of good things about him. So I'm excited to work with him. And so he was like, yeah, all right, let's get back to it. So we get back into it. We start recording. You know, Danny comes through, does his thing, and he's impressive. You know, he's done Sportscaster U at University of Syracuse. And he's got Harrison to guide him along the way. And so where he started from versus where he is now has been a really tremendous growth for him. But it's amazing because we did that and we hustled for like I said, 6-7 episodes where we had started to travel to Toronto. We had started to travel to, different, like Halifax. Somebody invited us to come up there and do a live show there. But the hardest and most time-consuming piece was editing the content.
Of course.
After the first episode, we took the content, we went to this diner. It's like Moonstruck Diner or something in Long Island. And we sat at this diner probably from 5 p.m. to like 2 a.m.
And it's just you two doing it?
Just me and him.
Doing everything, okay.
Just me and him. We're sitting there just, again, on YouTube, reading, on blogs, on different websites, reading about how to use Libsyn to push out your podcast to iTunes and to Spotify and to all these things. We were learning how to use Audacity, and Audacity is not easy, right? So I'm sitting here learning all this, and we finally put together the first episode. We push it out, go to sleep. Harrison has a car, and so he drove me back out to Long Island. And I told him, I was like, yo, dude, it's like 3 o'clock at this point. Why don't you just come inside and hang out? Me and him are both on the computer just like waiting for the podcast to be approved by iTunes. Finally, by the time it was approved, I had already passed out on the couch, and he was sitting next to me, passed out too. We both wake up the next day, and our show is all over ESPN, all over Fox Sports, all over Reddit, CBS, because we were talking about Danny and Kawhi's trade, right? And so there's not only just a couple of articles, there's tons of articles about what we just built, linking back to the show. And it was kind of a surreal moment to think that something that we had spent a lot of time planning and building would turn into such a viral sensation, because Danny was trending on Twitter after that.
You guys started this podcast at the perfect time, looking back on it now, to see how far the Raptors went, especially Danny Green and being involved in everything, and just watching them blow up this year and eventually win the NBA Finals.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that to me recently. It's like, man, you couldn't have been luckier. And I tell them all, I'm like, when I first started working with Danny and Harrison, I didn't do it because of the publicity that we were going to get. I didn't do it because I thought I was going to make a lot of money. Harrison told me from day one, he was like, bro, you're probably not going to get paid, and I'm probably not going to get paid. And I was like, that's fine. You guys
putting money out of your own pockets to get this thing going.
Not just money, man, but time and effort. And
which almost worse.
Yeah, it's, we spent a lot of resources and invested a lot to make this show a success. And so, again, Danny took a real chance on me and Harrison.
Of course.
And so we wanted to prove to him that we could do something really big and really give him an opportunity to make a name for himself outside of basketball.
Wow.
So, when I think about how lucky we've been to experience this journey for what it is, to make it all the way to the NBA Finals and not just compete, but to win it all, I think it's truly just a blessing, right? It's been something that I can't even put into words. Like, I had the opportunity to be in the locker room when these guys won at Game 6 in Oracle Arena.
Oh, the energy there.
Not only was it the last game at Oracle Arena, right, but this was a pivotal moment for the Raptors to solidify themselves into history.
And this was the first time they've ever won.
This is the first time they'd ever won an NBA championship. And I'm in the locker room with these guys, not only holding the trophy, but they're spraying me with champagne, right?
They all have all the goggles?
They have their goggles. I don't have any goggles, right? Man. So I'm like, okay, but keep going.
Need to bring a pair.
I should have thought about it.
Now you know.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That's crazy. And then when did you guys get picked up by Yahoo Sports? Because that really took you to the next level.
Then
you got the funding, and they were able to help you guys out kind of a little bit.
Absolutely. So they've been a tremendous resource and extremely helpful to our growth. And, we wouldn't be where we are now without them, right? And so I have to tip my hat off to them and thank them and salute them for all their support. And I know we can be a pain sometimes because me and Harrison are, we're just like, all right, we've got this idea. Let's run with it. How do we get to the next level? And sometimes that gets us into trouble because, I'm new to the game, right? And I believe in asking for forgiveness rather than asking for permission.
That's
right?
the way to do it.
And sometimes you just have to do things because you know that they're going to be big or you know that they're going to be meaningful. You just got to look back later and say, yeah, maybe I made a mistake. But I learned from it, right? And so made a lot of mistakes, a couple of them that have gone viral. So we'll talk about that another time. But from those mistakes, I was able to prove to people my true character by owning up to the mistakes and saying, hey, I had no idea, right? And my ignorance is not an excuse, but rather an opportunity for me to learn. So I think about some of those mistakes and I'm just like, damn, I should have known better, right? It's nothing crazy, right? Like I took a photo, for example, of Kawhi wearing a jersey, and I didn't know that those jerseys hadn't been unveiled, and so I accidentally posted the photo on our social, and it got picked up, and once I realized it was already too late, everybody had already known, and it was trending on Twitter.
It started getting shared. Ooh.
Yeah, so sometimes you make mistakes, and sometimes you make mistakes that go viral, and so I made one, and I owned up to it, and I let the team know. I was like, listen, I'm really sorry. I didn't know that this was in New Jersey, and I didn't know. I thought it was just for fun and games because it was behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And so I made a mistake, and everybody knew my name right away, right? And I look back at that, I'm like, I'm grateful that you all know me, but I'm going to take this opportunity to prove to you that I can do better than this. And so they loved that, and they really appreciated that humility from me. So
well, you showed yourself. Yeah. Everyone makes mistakes, but you proved that you owned up to it, and you went from there.
Like I said, this journey's been crazy, and it's
all a learning process in the end.
Absolutely.
It's insane.
Yeah, man.
So I mean, where's the podcast going?
So we just did a live show this past Saturday in front of over 1,000 people at the Queen Elizabeth Theater. And
where's that?
Was
Toronto?
Yeah, in Toronto, sorry. And that was a huge opportunity for us to celebrate Danny's birthday, which was Saturday.
Oh, nice.
Have one of his teammates, Fred Van Vliet, come and join us. And Nav Bhatia, who's one of the super fans of the show, of the Raptors, come and join us on the show. And so that was streamed all across Canada by CBC Sports, which was amazing. The amazing team of people who really helped us put on something special. And we had a couple of other people, Homestand Sports, Slick Hand Collective, that really helped me make this thing a reality. Mm-hmm. But we are looking to cover Danny's free agency, and so we're gonna have some content that could potentially cover that, and that's gonna be really
got
interesting.
Some new stuff coming out.
Yeah, man, and Danny's right now doing his camps all across Canada, and he's got his team with him that are helping him put those on, and so the show is gonna continue to live, and who knows? I would really love to see Danny back in Toronto, but it's his biggest free agency of his career, I think, and so we're all kind of standing by to see what happens and where he decides to go.
And if he ends up leaving, are you guys gonna continue on the podcast and keep it going?
If he ends up leaving, the podcast is important to him, and it's important to Harrison and myself, and so we're gonna make the resources, invest the resources rather, to make sure we're set up for success for wherever we go next.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Absolutely. This is something that we built for its longevity and for its opportunity to give all of us an opportunity to do something bigger.
Wow. So what was the most challenging thing or the biggest lesson you've learned from doing all this so far, your journey just in life getting to this point?
Because I work so closely with Danny and Harrison, and I get a chance to meet a lot of professional athletes and a lot of people that just have a lot of influence, one of the things that we always talk about is you got to maximize the positives, right? You're not living if you're not learning, right? And another one is you got to just learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I think those are some of the biggest challenges and biggest learnings that I've taken away from this experience. You're not always going to know the answer, so you got to be willing to listen.
Definitely pushing yourself outside your comfort zone is the only way to grow as a person and grow as a creative and just anything. But it's the scariest thing in the world sometimes.
Oh my God, I can't tell you, man, how terrified I am sometimes going into, not necessarily recording, but maybe going to some of the live shows. Like, all right, what do we got to be on the lookout for? All right, am I forgetting anything? What do I need to remember, right? I'm just kind of like brainstorming and just making sure everything is prepared and the guys are prepared. And I think for me, I've learned to get comfortable in big time situations where people are depending on me. I think I've learned now, you've not only got to dream big, but you've got to put in the time to make things a reality, right? I posted something earlier and I said, you got to put your heart into everything that you do, because at the end of the day, you got to enjoy the process along the way and not just wait for the outcome to be amazing. Because if you wait for the outcome to be amazing, you're going to have missed out on all the time that you invested building that thing. And who knows if the outcome is going to be what you expect. So if you can enjoy the process and the outcome turns out great, then you just enjoy your entire journey. We don't get every single day back, right? And a lot of the time that we invest doing some of the things that we do is time that we decided to give up doing something else.
Time is your most valuable asset.
Yeah, it's a commodity that you just can't get back. And so I fully believe in being able to dedicate your full self to everything that you do. Set aside the distractions and be dedicated to what it is you're trying to accomplish, because if you can put your head down and focus, you can accomplish something really big, just as long as you have the will and tenacity to make it happen. You got to be willing to make sacrifices.
I'm sure you get this sometimes, but being in the position you are, getting to work with Danny Green and run this podcast, people must think that this just happens overnight and like, oh, you're so lucky that this happened to you. But the amount of hard work and time you've put into this, and money, time, everything to make this happen.
Maybe it's wrong, but sometimes I get offended because people say to me, this is like an overnight success for you. I'm like, do you know how many people I've taken photos of for free? Do you know how many hours I've worked for free? You have no idea, right? I told Mark when I first started working with Mark, I was like, listen, man, I want to be involved with everything that you're doing, and I want to learn from you. And I know you don't necessarily have a big budget to pay me, but I want to learn, and I love the energy that you bring to the table. So I'm willing to work for free. On a Saturday morning at 6 a.m., give me a call, I'll be there. On a Sunday morning at 6 a.m., give me a call, I'll be there. Right? When I'm living here in New York City and I'm going out. So I realized very quickly that Mark is a man of his word, and he will actually call. So when he calls me on Friday morning and says, hey, can you be there tomorrow morning at Saturday at 6 a.m. at XYZ office location, I need to be on my game. So instead of going out and drinking and partying with my friends, I started staying at home, watching YouTube videos about things that I cared about, reading articles about things that I cared about, studying and just trying to perfect my craft, and learning about people and strategy and storytelling. And that's really what separated me from the Amjed that I used to be, right? Just like, I'll figure it out when I get there, whatever. And the Amjed that I am now, which is I try to learn as much as I can on my own. And I think that's one of the biggest messages that I think I want to send to everybody, whoever might be listening, is like, you got to invest in yourself first before you can think about spending your time doing anything else. Because how else are you going to get better if you don't invest the time in yourself to make sure your craft is good?
Wow, that's so important. And not many people do that. School teaches you to learn by the books and just follow a system. But I feel like the most I've grown, especially in college and after, is all the self-growth I did for myself, all the stuff I learned on my own that necessarily wasn't in school or wasn't taught to you.
Yeah. How did you get started with photography or the creative space, I guess?
Oh, man. Well, photography, my dad was always involved in that. And I found his camera one day in high school, and I just like, oh, this is kind of cool. I started getting into it. And I wasn't really an artistic kid. I played sports my whole life. I didn't really like art class. But something about photography I just loved. And then I found the medium of video, and it was photography, but better. I was able to, express myself so much more, and it was complicated. You use audio and visuals and all that, and I was able to express a side of myself I've never been able to do before.
Yeah.
And, in high school, I got really into it. Senior year, I was like learning every weekend, shooting stuff, anything. And going into college, I was like, oh, I can't make this, I can't get paid for this. This isn't a real job. And then I started, in college, I was doing stuff and I was like, I don't want to just do a normal job. What if I made this work? What if I figured out a way to actually do this? And my sophomore year, I connected with a guy named Jesse Rinka, and I've been shooting weddings with him ever since. And I met Mark, and all these people are mentors to me because
exactly,
starting out, you don't know if you can do it. You don't know how everything works, especially the business side. It's insane. I could teach myself how to shoot a photo or how to make a video look good, but the business side is complicated. You need to just learn by failing, kind of.
Yeah, you I think are a good example of you have a certain skill set, but there's just some things that you don't know that you need to know.
Exactly.
Right? I tell people all the time, I'm like, I don't know what I don't know. Right? and that's why for me I love talking to people, because you might have a different perspective on shooting something than I do, right? Or you might have some level of expertise in some area that I don't have, that I could leverage from you. And so I think you mentioned something that's really important to me as well, which is mentorship.
Yeah.
Right? Not only being mentored, but also being a mentor to other people. And so I find myself sometimes writing articles about how to start a podcast, or I wrote an article when I first moved here to New York City, talking about why I moved, where I came from, what that journey was like. I'm curious for you, when you were left school, what did you expect that you were going to do for yourself?
To be honest, I didn't know what I was going to do. So senior year, I was kind of like, do I start applying for jobs? Do I try and go that route and just, try and build up as much money as possible doing corporate or something like that? And I just really didn't want to do it. I talked to my dad and sat down with him one day. I was like, Dad, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get stuck in a routine, have a family, have kids, get stuck in this flow, and then 40 years later, regret life. And he told me, you're 22 years old. Just fucking do it. Do whatever you want. Try something. Make it work. And now's the time to fail.
Exactly. You
don't have a lot of overhead. You can make it work. Now's the time to go out there and try and follow your passion. and I took it and I ran with it.
I love that.
And I've been graduated for exactly a year now.
That's what I'm talking about.
And I've been making it work, and I'm loving life. You know, it's challenging. There's always ups and downs to it. And this lifestyle it's hard. Income is inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
Some months, you know, this was my best month ever, which is amazing. And then some months make you feel like you're a failure.
Yeah. But you know, I think there's a difference between feeling like you might have failed or feeling like you haven't gotten to where you want to be, and being in a position where you've actually accomplished something you can be proud of, right? I think there's always a voice in your head that's like, nah, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. And for me, I used to talk to Mark about all these projects that I want to do. And he's like, why don't you do it? I'm like, well, I only have this one camera. I only have yada, yada, yada. And he's like, all I'm hearing is excuses. He's like, you can go and rent a car. You can go on vacation. You can do all these other things that you want to do. Why not rent out a few cameras? Why not ask a friend to help you, right? And so I stopped being in this position where I was like, yeah, I want to do this. Yeah, I want to do that. And I started prioritizing the things that mattered, and I started doing more and talking less.
That's so true.
Right? I saw somewhere a long time ago, it was like an article that said, I think 70% of people get 80% of their satisfaction when it comes to projects just from saying that they're going to do it. Just from saying that you're going to do something, you're like, yeah, great, I'm good.
You feel like you already did it.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Mic drop. I'm good. Right? Like,
I'm done.
Come on. You still got to execute on it. You got to set aside that voice in your head that's like, yeah, you shouldn't do this thing. You can't do it. Maybe who cares? But maybe it won't turn out so good. You got to just do it. And sometimes, I'm a believer in sharing things even if they're not perfect, because it gives you the opportunity to grow.
So that's always been hard for me. Starting out, I was like, oh, it has to be perfect. And I would kill myself. And it's never going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And what is perfect? But sometimes you just got to just keep doing something over and over again. And it's never going to be 100%. But if you get it close, if you just keep doing it, it's going to get closer to that ideal of perfect.
The whole point of documenting your journey is that you can look back and think about where you were in moments in your life when you were doing something that you were brand new at, right? I look back at my career now, and I think about, even when we just started the podcast, I wasn't that good at audio editing. I wasn't good at it at all, but I'd gotten a lot better since then, right? But I can listen to the very first few episodes and then listen to some of the later ones that I actually produced, and I can be like, yeah, this is getting much better, right? And I've got Danny giving me feedback and Harrison giving me feedback, and we're getting better along the way. And so if I didn't have those episodes, or if I had waited to put those episodes out because I felt uncomfortable, we'd be waiting forever. And who knows when we would have had the opportunity to strike again while we were hot. And so I learned along the way, even with some of my clients now for Lingo Live, it's like, all right, rather than building the most beautiful deck that explains to you what your investment looks like, or explains to you the strategy of how we're going to grow this particular relationship, or whatever, I'm going to just share with you the bare essentials right away so that you have a chance to dissect them and give me some feedback so I can improve it and we can get better together. And then we co-created this entire journey now together, rather than me just creating something for you and you're like, all right, cool, yeah, I'll take it. Or no, I don't want it.
Exactly.
Right? I get your buy-in.
And a big thing for me has been looking at the macro picture instead of the micro. I mean, I've only been graduated for a year. I've been doing this for a year only.
Yeah.
And, some days I wake up and I'm like, I should be further. And then I look back and I'm like, I've only been doing it for a year and I've already done so much. Mm-hmm. And the best part for me is, I feel like I'm making a difference. I'm doing small stuff, but still it's fully what I want to do. And it's like my project. I feel like I'm actually, I feel like I have an impact and I'm not just in a big company. And,
exactly.
I got fired the next day, I'm replaceable.
Right.
I want to feel like I'm actually making an impact.
Do you think you could have gone and worked in a corporate setting?
I think I could have.
Yeah. Do you think you would have liked it?
I think I would have got very comfortable, and that doesn't make me happy anymore. I like to be challenged. I like to keep progressing. And the one thing for me is I don't want to just get into a setting where I just, get complacent and stop learning. Yeah. The biggest benefit for me just in life from being a creative is just I'm always learning something new, regardless of what it is. And that's transitioned into my personal life. I'm always just wanting to improve myself, whether it's personal finance or everything like that. And if it wasn't for being self-employed and living this lifestyle, I don't think I would have ever learned that stuff that helped me so much just in my normal life.
Yeah, I think you said something that's really important, which is you didn't want to get complacent. And I tell some of my friends that ask me, and I'm not knocking anybody that has a corporate job. I had a corporate job at one point in my life, and I think about what is a salary, or what is total compensation when you're at an organization, right? And I graduated, was working for a big company. I had a very good salary for my age, right? And I think about it now and I'm like, okay, a salary, when you work for another organization, is how much money you're willing to accept to set aside your dreams and help them build theirs, right?
That's so true.
And so I got to a point where I said to myself, my happiness, my mental sanity, and my fulfillment are way more important than any dollar figure that I could ever put a price on my life on.
And again, I never will knock anyone for having a 9-to-5,
No, you
whether
can't.
they love it or they're just doing it to support their family or anything.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's actually better for most people. I think it just makes more sense.
Yeah.
But for me, time was my most valuable asset. And, you know, with the 9-to-5, I'm completely on someone else's schedule. And, you know, bless the people that have more flexibility in that. But I knew that, you know, starting out, no, I wouldn't be making as good of money. But the potential is there, and I have my time. I can do what I want and make it work.
I think you also can't do things chasing after money. You can't do things where you're only concerned about the financial upside, right? Like my first job, I worked at Taco Bell. I was 16 years old, and I was young. I was kind of naive. I was hungry. I wanted to make money, right? And my friend was like, "Hey, why don't you come work with me at Taco Bell?" And I was like, Taco Bell, man, what? I don't want to do that. He's like, we'll pay you like $7.50 an hour. I was like, all right, fine, whatever. It's $7.50 an hour more than I have now.
It's better than you have,
right? So I had my older brother had a car, and it was like maybe a $500 car with like 300,000 miles on it. And so he would let me borrow the car so I could drive it down the street to go to this Taco Bell where I worked.
Oh, nice.
And I would work at the Taco Bell some shifts I would work like Saturday morning from 7 a.m. to like 11 p.m. because I just wanted to work as many hours as I could in a day so that I could make enough money so I could pay for my own expenses so my parents didn't have to support me. And so I think about those experiences, right? And then my second job, I went to go work at Sears. I was working as a cashier there. Then I went and I worked at Abercrombie Kids at like the HQ, helping them set up stores so they could create templates for stores all over the country. Excuse me. And then I interned at a couple different places before I finally worked full time. And when I was working full time and doing things I didn't like, it made me appreciate the time when I was working at Taco Bell, making $7.50 an hour, right? And when I was working there, after being there for maybe a year, they came back to me and said, "Hey, congratulations, you're getting a raise." I'm like, "Oh, amazing! How much money am I getting?" Like, instead of making $7.50, you're gonna make $7.55. I said, "Wait a minute, a nickel?
That's it.
What is that? What am I supposed to do with that? That doesn't even buy me a gallon of gas. Like, what am I supposed to do with that?" Then I was like, all right, I'm definitely never gonna work here full time, right? I'm 16, right? I'm like, my entire mindset was that I was going to go get an education because an education was going to give me the opportunity to have access to resources and access to opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise. No one in my family had ever gone to college. So I needed to be able to set a precedent for my kids and for my family and for my kids' kids that education was the way to unlock your own potential. And so I invested the time to make that a reality. I invested the time to hustle through college, and I made some mistakes and I learned along the way. But I look back at it now and I'm really grateful that I did things the way that I did. And I look back at Taco Bell some days when days are hard, right? And I'm like, I remember working those ridiculous shifts because I wanted to make money, because I was hungry, right? Because I wanted to eat, somewhat decent food when I was working there. But I really liked the people that I worked with. And that's what separated my experience working there versus working in corporate America, where the people that I worked with were hungry. If they didn't work those hours, they didn't have a way to pay their rent. They didn't have a way to pay for their kids to eat. They didn't have a way for them to get access to medicine or supplies that they needed if they were sick. And that really humbled me. Because I just told you, right? Like I come from a family where everybody's hardworking. Mm-hmm. Everybody started from the bottom. And I don't think that I'm ever going to be someone who can just relax. I don't think that I'm ever going to be someone who is determined to get somewhere and stop, right? I want to find a way to not only build a legacy and support my family, but to help kind of create the ladder for people who are behind me to climb as well. I want to be able to support them and give them access to scholarships, give them access to resources and mentorship so that they can do the same thing.
Well, that kind of goes back to what you said before. We both have mentors, especially Mark. I could say he's probably one for both of us.
Sure, but, absolutely.
Hopefully at a point, me and you could both be like that for someone else. And I'm sure there are people who will look up to you and want to follow in your path. And it's nice that you're able to give back. all these people helped us on our journey and still do.
Yeah,
and
man.
To be able to give back one day, like, that's the best feeling in the world.
That is not only the best feeling in the world, but I can't repay Mark, Bill, my neighbor Esther, who was like a godmother to me, a grandmother to me, right? My godmother Jeannie, my parents, the people who gave me scholarships. I was part of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation as well, and they paid for my education,
Oh, wow.
right? And so I've met Bill Gates' father, but I haven't met Bill himself. But Bill paid for my education, right? A man who doesn't know me paid for my education. And so I can't repay him for that debt. And so what I can do, right, is for him and everybody else that invested into my life, I can pay it forward for those other people that are behind me, right? I can strengthen them. I can support them. I can give them access to resources. I can give them opportunity. Danny and Harrison gave me an opportunity, and I jumped on it. And it's been nothing but fruitful for me. And I think about that all the time. And that's why sometimes, even though I may be tired, like I'll go to a middle school or a high school and talk to the kids about what I'm doing. I'll help them build strategies. I'll help them learn to become better storytellers. I'll go and tell them my story and inspire them. Because when I was growing up, it was before Barack Obama became the first black president. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, I wanted to be president, but I wasn't born here. I was born in Saudi Arabia, so I'm like, damn it.
I cross that off.
Yeah, I can't be president. Damn it, right? So, all right, now that ship has sailed, let me focus on other things. And so I think representation is key to allowing people to see that the possibilities are endless. Just because you don't see someone that looks like you, it doesn't mean it's not possible. But sometimes when you're young, or sometimes when you're so focused on trying to accomplish your own dreams, you're not able to think that, oh yeah, there are people out there that look like me that are doing amazing things. So I think that's really important.
Wow. I just want to go back to the other thing quick,
Sure.
About happiness.
Oh yeah.
I mean, everyone needs money. You need money to survive. You need,
it's important.
You want to be comfortable. You don't want to be struggling. But also growing up for me, my dad he climbed the corporate ladder and he got a good paying job and he got stuck into it. And I see him now, he comes home and he's just not happy.
Why is that?
He's not passionate about what he's doing anymore. He has a really good paying job. He can't do something else right now until he retires. He has to put another kid through college. But that's something he just instilled on me at a young age that, don't just do it for the money. Because the money's nice at first, but then it gets old.
Right.
You got to do something that you're actually passionate about and happy about. And in the end, you'll actually probably make more money from that just because you love what you do every day and you want to have that hustle and that drive and you don't want to dread going into work every day. Like, that's the last thing I want. I don't want to feel like, oh, I just have another job to do. I have to go into work today. Like, exactly. I'm happy every time I get to work. It's because it's stuff I want to do and I have to control.
Absolutely, man. And I think your father hit it right on the head, right? Like, my parents both come from the same traditional background where you just work because you have to support your family, mm-hmm. right? And it's I think in the U.S., people here, we live so that we work every single day to accomplish or to hit these goals that some of the goals are realistic, but so far-fetched and so out of our reach that we're constantly working and we're never happy with what we have. And coming from a third world country, coming from a family where we had no money, right, and having to work as hard as we have so far, I learned a long time ago, you can have as much money in the world as you want, but it won't always give you the opportunity, it won't always give you the happiness that you need. I think for me, I'd rather be broke and have my family around me and be happy and be hustling, doing something that I love and be able to provide for them, than to be doing something that I absolutely despise, make all the money in the world and never have time to see my family or never have time to do things that I care about and hate the entire process all the way through. Because it's like what we talked about earlier. Time is a commodity you can't get back. And I would hate to live my life and know that I wasted time, right? Maybe I learned something along the way about myself, but why not be happy if you can be happy?
Exactly.
It's a choice, right?
It's funny too. I see there's some people I went to college with and, I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I decided that I wasn't going to get a standard job, and mm-hmm. people definitely had their thoughts about it. But then I see other people that, just graduated college and they're already complaining about their job. Oh, I hate it. I'm not happy there. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Now's the one time in your life to take that chance to do something.
Absolutely. I mean, I think at the end of the day, man, we are fortunate to be in the position that we are. When you're young, you got to take a risk. Everybody's risk tolerance is different, and everybody isn't always equipped with the resources to be successful. Some people that I meet sometimes are like, oh, I look at your Instagram or I look at your photos and you come from a pretty wealthy family, right? I'm like, huh? Wealthy? It's like, I had days in my life where my dad was working and my dad was making just enough money to pay the rent for us. And some days he would give my mom like $5. And my mom would take my two brothers and I. We'd go to McDonald's, and with that $5, she wouldn't even buy food for herself. She would buy food for me and my brothers from the dollar menu so that we could have something to eat, right? So when I think about people that are telling me, oh yeah, you come from a wealthy family, I'm kind of offended. I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't come from a wealthy family. I didn't come from all the resources in the world, but I had a mother who loved and supported us and was willing to sacrifice everything for us. I had my father who worked his ass off to be able to provide for us, right? And my father is a different beast. He's an interesting guy. Isn't the most affectionate person, but was willing to make sacrifices for us just as my mother did. And so when I think about those experiences, I'm motivated, I'm inspired, I am, I hustle because they hustled for me, right?
And you want to kind of repay it down the line and
yeah, man,
be able to give them a life where they can be a little bit more relaxed, hopefully.
Exactly, man. I told you earlier, my family's from Sudan, right? And my family in Sudan is right now a part of the crisis and the revolution that's happening there, where peaceful protesters are being killed left and right because they're seeking a democratic government so they can govern themselves after having just overthrown a corrupt dictator, Omar al-Bashir, who was in office for the last 30 years and is a wanted for crime right across the world through genocide that he led that was happening in Darfur, right? And so when I think about my family, and when I think about the people of Sudan who are my people, right, I think about, again, representation. I really hadn't noticed how many people of significance or importance or people that were doing amazing things from the Sudanese community existed until this revolution happened. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that there's a lot of people that look like me or are from the same place that I am that are doing not only amazing things, but are finding ways to contribute to the organizations that are supporting the people that are on the ground now. If you've noticed on Instagram, you see a lot of people change their profile pictures to that shade of blue. Mm-hmm. It's called Matar blue, because that person was a journalist or a musician who was killed in Sudan during this uprising. And he was such a great person, and that was his favorite shade of blue. And that shade of blue became kind of a symbol for the revolution that's happening in Sudan, because, and that's important because it gives people the opportunity to ask, like, why is your Instagram profile blue or your Twitter blue? And I get to start a conversation with people to raise awareness about what's happening there, because the government in Sudan also blacked out the people in Sudan from having access to the internet. So they don't get the opportunity to document what's happening there and to raise awareness and to let people know, hey, there's a fucking crisis going on here and we need support. So, that's something that is near and dear to my heart, because I have all my aunts and uncles and my cousins and the remainder of my family all there. And so I think about, how do I now find ways to support that and to raise awareness for that? And so I'm working on that now.
Are you able to contact them at all or stay in touch?
It's hard. It's hard, right? Because we had been able to have access to the internet, so we could contact them via Messenger or WhatsApp and things like that, Facebook Messenger. But now with the internet blackout, they don't have access to those resources. So we go back to the days where you go and you buy this phone card and you scratch the back of the phone card and you dial these numbers, and then it asks you for the PIN that you just scratched off.
Oh, wow.
And that PIN gives you, for $5, maybe 30 minutes of talk time. And so you call on the phone if they're able to access the phone. And you can say, hey, how are you doing? How's everything going on? Right? Check on them, make sure they're okay. But there's times where you don't get the opportunity to chat with them for days, and you're left wondering what's going on.
Scary.
Scary.
I can imagine.
It's terrifying.
Wow.
So,
I mean, hopefully with the power of social media and just the power we have now, you're able to make a difference and help people out and get them out of those situations.
I hope so, man. We raised some money at the last live show that we did, so I'm donating that to the University of Khartoum in Sudan, because they're donating that money into organizations that are providing medical supplies and food and nutrition for some of the people, as well as helping some of the people that were killed get buried and get funeral services for those folks. So
that's amazing, being able to use the platform that you've created and help out the world, give back.
Man, I can't tell you like what that moment meant for me, to be able to stand on stage and not only raise awareness, but also to raise funds to support those people. Like, I'm rarely someone to kind of sound my own horn, but that was something that I felt was really amazing for me to be able to do for my people.
And honestly, like, the podcast is cool. You know, everything that you're doing is cool, but that's probably the best thing I've heard.
That's the coolest. Yeah, that's the coolest.
That's the biggest reward, and that's what it's all about. It's making a difference in the world. That's what we all kind of want to achieve, and however we do it, through living a creative life or whatever, like that's the goal. It's to make a difference and leave a legacy, like you said.
Exactly. At the end of the day, man, I want to look back at my life and know that I've impacted lives of other people and supported them and inspired them and made them feel like they can accomplish anything in their lives that they want to accomplish.
It's amazing.
Yeah, man.
All right, thank you, man.
It's been crazy.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.